All right, next, let's check out the textures mode, which is right here. As you can see next to textures, it says granular playback. What that means is that as we play back through the sample, very tiny loops are created, and these tiny loops create the illusion of the audio being time stretched. Now, these loops are referred to as grains, and we can change the grain size to make the loops a little bit bigger, which will make the time stretching sound a bit more obvious and kind of clunky. Or we can make the grains smaller, which makes those loops smaller, which can either make the playback sound more smooth or start to make it sound a bit more alien. So let's check out a few ways we can take advantage of this. Textures is currently selected. Right now, the key tracking is on. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, so no matter what pitch I play on the keyboard, this will play back at the root pitch. Okay, so we're pretty familiar with how that sounds right now. Now, before I turn key tracking back on, we see here we have controls for speed, the grain, and the motion. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in a little bit at the beginning of the sample. And I'm going to start to slow the speed control down. Okay, so when we slow the speed down dramatically, we get a very different sound than we get from cycles. Now, the grain control I have not changed yet. And again, this changes the size of the little loops that are created as we move through the sample. That's the reason why we're able to stretch it like this without really changing the pitch. Now, as I make the grain size bigger, it's going to make those tiny loops bigger, and you're going to notice those loops a bit more. They're going to become more obvious. So you hear those loops. Now, I'm going to keep playing it. I'll play it from the beginning again, and I'll reduce the grain size, and you'll notice the loops get smaller. At a certain point, the smaller loops allow the time stretching to sound a lot more smooth, and then you make them even smaller, and then something weird starts to happen. So check it out. So yeah, suddenly it doesn't sound anything like the original sound, and things just got kind of strange. Very cool for sound design purposes. And again, if you want to do anything from just some extreme time stretching to radically changing a sound, it's a great tool. But wait, there's another knob over here that says motion. Now with the motion control, if we adjust this and we increase it, the playhead sounds like it starts to kind of slightly wiggle or jitter as it's playing through the sample. This can give you some very, very interesting sounds when combined with the grain parameter. So let's check this out. I'll play the sample again. And let me actually make the grain size relatively small. Here we go. Now adjust the motion. And you notice it doesn't sound anywhere near as smooth as it did before. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard the term of a grain cloud before, but this is a great tool to use to create certain textures. You could run this through some reverb and make it sound like there's a storm going on outside. Very, very cool and extremely flexible. Now, with the motion control up like this, I'm going to start to play around with the grain parameter here, just so you can hear how this influences the sound of these smaller and bigger loops that we utilize. So just like that, you go from it sounding like there's a storm outside to having this very glitchy loop-based playback, and it all comes from the texture mode. Now, these three modes can all utilize the ability to freeze the playhead. We haven't explored that yet because this opens up a whole another world of potential, and I want to dedicate some videos specifically to how we can use each one of these with the freeze playhead parameter.